Thank you for being on time. Well, this session is about great power games, and as we wait for the author, and maybe I'll just tell you the context in which it's written. So, Mr. Sood, as you know, was the chief of the R&AW, and he says that this is the third book in a trilogy that he's written. So he's been very prolific over the last few years. So, one reason I think you should be interested in this book, for those of you who are not familiar with international relations, is a fantastic history of how we got here. He's got fantastic nuggets inside. For example, did you know that after the Second World War, there were a lot of German spies, Hitler's spies. Few of them were actually adopted by the CIA. They were rescued from Germany. They didn't stand trial. They didn't go for the war crimes trial. They were brought into the United States and they were sent back to West Germany so that they could spy on Russia. Because Nazi Germany had a deep intelligence network in Russia. The United States decided to take advantage of it. So if you see, United States did a lot of, if you've seen this movie called Dr. Strangelove, you will see that the United States actually picked on the best talent it could find in Germany, in Hitler's Germany, Nazi Germany, and both in the CIA and in other places, like in the nuclear science department, in strategic thinking, in foreign policy, and so on. Here's a question for you. India also hired a person who was in the Nazi regime. Who was that guy? And has got a connection to this city. Do you know anybody? Can anybody tell me this? India, I'll give you specifically which government. The Nehru government hired a person who was in the German establishment during the Second World War. Who was this guy and which city did he come and why did he come? Come on. How many of you are true Bangaloreans here? You're Bangalore. Anybody? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. You're a Bangalorean. But do you know who that guy is? No. Okay, so it's an interesting story. The person is Kurt Tank. How many have heard of Kurt Tank? Okay, Kurt Tank was an aircraft designer. So he built fighter aircraft for the Nazis, for the German Luftwaffe during the Second World War. And he came to which city? Bangalore. And what did he design? HF-21 Marut, right? Now, Marut is related to what in Bangalore? Marathalli, right? So those of you who don't know what Marathalli, people say it's Marthahalli, Marathahalli or whatever. No, it's Maruthalli because Kurt Tank was invited to Bangalore. He came to HAL. He built a HF-21 fighter. He brought his own, some of his own engineers. So all the engineers and the people who worked on the Marut project lived near HAL in a place which was called Maruthalli, which is now a big traffic jam. Okay, so that's one of the, I mean, I just gave you that connection. But the book has many more interesting nuggets like this. For example, the two secretaries of state, the first chief of the CIA and the secretary of state, John Foster Dulles, both worked for a law firm which represented Nazi Germany's business interests in the United States. So, you know, even for a person like me who studies some of this, these kind of nuggets were extremely interesting. Then the second part of the book really is about Ukraine. And I wish he was here, he could explain why Ukraine is important. And I think those of you who probably came to listen to that part, I'll give out some spoilers, right? According to the book, Ukraine is important because it's the fulcrum of US foreign policy, right? Because once Ukraine becomes important and it's no longer, let's say, you know, it's no longer part of the Russian sphere of influence, the Russians will pick a fight with the Chinese, and a Russia-China fight is good for the United States. So Mr. Sood's argument why Ukraine is important for the United States is that because once Russia no longer has to bother about Eastern Europe, Russia will get into a fight with the Chinese, and that's good for India, right? So that's one more thing. And what I liked about this book is the level of detail that he goes into some of the things which are, familiar with. If you talk about uh, why is energy markets, why, people say United States, a lot of US decisions are because of energy, right? Because of oil. They invaded the Middle East because of oil. They invaded Afghanistan because of, went into the Taliban in the 90s because of gas and so on. I think the book goes into a level of detail about and connecting a whole lot of dots uh, about all of this. So it's interesting for you to be reading this book. But, you know, what struck me when I read this book is, when senior Indian government officials write books, there are of two types, right? One type is, especially in the strategic sector, army people, intelligence people, foreign office, and so on. There are two types. One type of book is that, we screwed up, right? So it's an entire long litany of all the screw-ups that we did. We screwed up at the low level, we screwed up at the middle level, the political leadership screwed up, the military screwed up, the intelligence screwed up. So there's a whole list of screw-ups, and then it's a sort of a mea culpa. So some of them also say that, look, I was there, and we screwed up. So that's one category of books. The second category of books is they are out to get us, right? We are all on our own. The world is out there. They're going to get us, and we've got to do what we've got to do. So Mr. Sood's book, this Great Power Rules, is in the second category. So every single page you would see is how various international players are doing things which are entirely in their interests. Even our presumable friends and allies and partners are friends, allies, and partners because it's in their interests. And at the drop of the hat, they'll change their mind. So you can't trust anybody, which is hard realism. And they also talk about, he also talks about how, what might be their agenda going out into the future, right? And based on these things, the realization is that we are on our own. Sorry, guys, there's nobody who's going to bail us out in case we get into a war with somebody or get into a situation with somebody, and we have to manage on our own, right? So this is the second part. And what strikes me is how much of the second part is actually makes sense, you know. At a deep level, all of it makes, some parts of it might sound conspiratorial, right? You're joining so many dots, and that's what I suppose intelligence people do, join dots. Some parts of it looks overly paranoid, conspiratorial. But overall, if you see, the spirit of it seems to make sense. Like this is what is happening in the world. This is how great powers behave. And some of us might be way too naive in terms of policy recommendations. And I can tell you mea culpa, my own recommendation, right? Some of us at Takshashila, when the Ukraine war broke out, some of us argued that, look, we should be on the side of the West and the Ukrainians, because you look at our trade relationships, 95% of our trading partners are people who've supported Ukraine, right? There's just 5%, which is Russia, Belarus, and I suppose North Korea, who have not. But 95% of our trading partners, our investors, the countries we travel to are with Ukraine, and we shouldn't be standing apart. And very few people, like my senior colleague Anand Arni, who's here, I suppose Mr. Sood, people like Vijay Kelkar, a few of these senior people told us that, look, no, that's not right. Being on the side of Russia makes sense, because the Russians have been with us through thick and thin. We said, no, that's not the Russians, that's the USSR. The Soviet Union is different from Putin's Russia. You can't draw the analogy. They said, no, that really doesn't matter. Geopolitically, they have been with us. At best, we should be neutral. There's no sense in us being pro-Ukraine. Events have proven this logic right? After Trump comes into power, you see how a country which we thought is our deep partner. For 25 years, we thought the United States is our deep partner. How a country like the United States can just do a palti and then put you out there and start negotiating with you transactionally, right? So it doesn't mean that the Russians are not negotiating with us transactionally. The Russians are not angels. The Americans are not angels. There are no angels in this game. But I think the idea is to be a lot more thoughtful, have a longer arc of history when you're making these decisions. So that's something which I learned from senior colleagues like Anand Arni and Vijay Kelkar, who were consistently over the last 3 years debating this with us. Right? The younger lot, me, I would say somewhere in the middle, and the younger people younger than I am in our organization, were all very strongly in favor of working with Ukraine. So I think the reason to read a book like Mr. Sood's is to get that kind of a perspective. You will not agree with everything he says. I mean, I found it hard to agree with the books where he says that there is an enemy within. Right? I'm always worried about calling somebody an enemy within, because those people are, for example, I have fierce disagreements with some of my friends who are leftists, right? Who are leftists in economics, who stand for socialist economics and so on. But that's a point of view, right? The moment we start calling them an internal enemy, I think we start getting into a very difficult situation where, we are not truly democratic. I mean, how do I know that I'm right? How do I know? I could be wrong. My friend who's a socialist might be right. I don't know, right? So I think being humble, intellectually humble, being a little more respectful of people who have a different point of view, I think is important for us as a nation to move forward. So calling people internal enemies is something which I found a little disturbing in Mr. Sood's book. But he has a good point. I mean, he's not making a nasty point. What he's saying is that there is Western money, which is both commercial money, it's foreign money, not just Western money. It's foreign money, which is both commercial and government, and it finds its way through agencies which are political parties, non-profit organizations, media houses, finds its way and pursues a particular agenda. I think that part is true, right? And as he says, it's sometimes, when he says there are 4 types of spies, he says one of those 4 types of spies is they don't even know that they are spying. They don't even know that they are agents of a foreign interest, right? So they're just willy-nilly, innocuously signing up for an international agenda. So I think we've got...
Do we open up?
Yeah, I think I've spoken enough, and I suppose you've got tired of listening to my voice. Maybe I'll come this side and become Vikram Sood. So now I'm Vikram Sood, and when I'm here, I'm Nitin Pai. Okay, so you can ask questions to Nitin or Vikram. I'll answer accordingly.
You can actually take a seat.
No, I'll stand, because it's not right for me to go up. Yeah, it's not right for me to go up before the guest is here.
Happens if China takes Hong Kong?
That's a good question. Maybe I should ask you this question back. If China takes Hong Kong, what do you want India to do? Answer that question.
I will decide how many of our allies we trade with and whether it's above 95%.
Will you really do that? Or will you really do that?
The reason I asked is I can only think, apart from the obvious ones, of snowball effects of something that will happen. But are there some things internally and not exogenous apart from its own?
So I can tell you what we have thought about it at Takshashila, right? We've had a couple of rounds of simulations of this, discussions on what happens if the China were to take Taiwan. Right? First of all, the House consensus is that they're not likely to do it very soon, right? The trigger point is if Taiwan declares independence, etc., then they might. But as long as Taiwan doesn't declare independence, it's unlikely that China will want to go in and do a military invasion of Taiwan in the near term, right? That's the baseline. But suppose they do, what should India do? Our view is that we should do nothing. Why should we care, right? Because of 2 reasons. One is, as Napoleon said, never disturb an adversary when he's making a mistake, right? If the Chinese decide to take Taiwan, they're going to be embroiled in that particular exercise for at least 10 to 15 years, which gives us 10 to 15 years of leeway where we'll have more breathing room to do the things that we do, right? Without having to be, the Chinese will not have the, energy and the wherewithal to bother with us in the Himalayas and so on. So one reason is that, right? Just let them make a mistake. Don't worry about it. So if there are Taiwanese in the audience, I'm sorry, we're not going to come out and bail you out. But the other reason is this really our fight? I mean, if you look at whether Taiwan and China are part of the same nation, it's a question which people of those two countries have to decide, right? It's not for the United States to decide whether Taiwan should be independent or not, right? Why is the United States accepted as a power in East Asia? The United States is accepted because the presence of the United States creates stability and security for the rest of us, so that we can transact our business and go along. They keep the peace, they ensure that there is no unstable activities happening in East Asia, so that we can continue with economics and so on, right? But if the US presence changes from being a stabilizing influence to a destabilizing influence or a risky influence, then countries of the region will ask, why are we even, happy with the United States being here? So I suppose our answer to that question is that, okay, let them fight it out. We'll deal with whoever is the winner. Any question?
Hi, I'm Avantika. Sood sir's point of view regarding that's
Yeah, so I'll come this side.
shift there. Sees whatever it is its territory. I mean, the fictitious claim that it does. In nth century, this was all somewhere related to China. So today, it's my legitimate right to have all those territories. So in that way, India can say, yeah, entire Pakistan, whatever. But the point that I want to ask is, India gave asylum to Dalai Lama. And afterward, it said that China got furious on India afterwards, and that is when they invaded and captured the Aksai Chin. So do you not think, considering both the points, that that is just a coincidence and it would have anyways happened?
Okay, first I'll come this side and give you Nitin's answer. So, so I'm pretending to be you. So,
Mr. Sood in the house, a round of applause, please.
so please. So I'll give you my answer first. See, I think the question of a boundary is very recent. India and China for the longest period of time had frontiers. We didn't have boundaries or borders. So borders are a 100-year-old, 120-year-old invention. And they've been drawn arbitrarily through what frontiers are. That's the root cause of the problem we have with the Chinese. It's not so much that this particular, it's not like 5,000 years ago, this particular peak, or 500 years ago, this particular valley belonged to us or to China, right? So there were frontiers. Frontiers were changed into borders in about 100 years ago, when colonial rule was prevalent in both India and China. And we've inherited those colonial borders and therefore those colonial problems, right? So I think the mic has to go to Mr. Sood. I have given them a summary. I have already sold your book, so about 5% of your royalties come to me. So, okay, we'll do it 2.5. So, but no, I did a better job. So it's 5. So maybe you could just spell out the key arguments in your book, because I think we are just about 7 minutes away from close. Yeah. So
that's nice, short and sweet. Well, actually, pardon me for being late. Can you hear me? Pardon me for being late. It's not my fault. Okay, now you can hear me. It's not my fault. I got late. But anyhow, the main points in my book that I want to make is that we are in an era of decline of the major powers. I.e., I have United States in mind, particularly. The term I use for this has been chaos, creative chaos, and creative dangers that they are throwing at the world. As you can see from So my concentration in the book has been the decline of the US, resurge of Russia, then it became, and reassertion by China once again. And if we in India miss the boat now, we will not get onto it again for 300 years. I haven't said that in the book, but that's that will be off forever. The other thing is that wars of all kind are now incessant, repetitive, all over. You first had the 90s of the Balkan wars, then you had the war on terror, then you had Iraq, Iran all simultaneously, then you had a slight gap, and then we went back to Syria, and then we went on reordering the Middle East. In the process, the Russians felt left out, and when the thrust to Ukraine bombed up, he warned the West, he warned the United States in particular, if you take Ukraine into the NATO, I am going to attack. And they actually led him on to that attack, thinking that Ukraine was powerful enough to overtake or defeat Russians. That is what happens when hubris takes over. You think that you are the strongest and the other guy has nothing. Actually, as I see it, the Russians had been preparing for this since Putin came to power. They have had enough stock in the kitty, they have enough weapons, they have everything. And now that Ukraine is fading out, we hear of another war in Venezuela. The Israeli-Hamas thing hasn't been sorted out. I think somewhere along the line you probably see Iran also involved. In the midst of all this, I see China gathering strength gradually, and it will probably end up with China number 1, US number 2, maybe Russia number 3, and India hopefully number 4. I'll leave it at that. 2 minutes left.
Yeah. Any question? Instead of me, if there's a question, you could just ask that question.
You can extend by about
5 minutes? Yeah, let's do with questions. Yeah, because you've been such a wonderful audience. The person at the back raised a hand first. The 4th or the 5th row.
Nobody can.
No, wait. This lady here. Yeah,
Oh, good.
Hi, am I audible?
yeah.
So it's a two-layered question. So when you
Quick, one-layered question.
okay, all right. So when you answered about how India will make its stance in terms of Taiwan and China, and when Sir answered about how the global powers will be ordered eventually, with China leading and not leading, but with China there, and then Russia, and then China, then USA, and then Russia. So how has Indian foreign policy worked for us, and how do we see it evolving? Because you also mentioned that the second part of the book also addresses that where do we position ourselves, and the convenience of separating ourselves from others' problems can also lead us into a problem where people won't support us eventually. So this is just the idea I have, but as a student, this is something I had to ask with any insights from you. Thank you.
Well, actually, right now we are fairly lonely. Let's face it, the West is now, when I say West, I mean the United States really, with Europe as a hanger-on. The US has no time for us, particularly under this president. He changes his mind far too often. We can't rely on him. They change they go back on their promises. There are only 3 countries that I know have not gone back on their promises when they deal with us. Russia is one, the other is France, and the other is Israel. I refer particularly to the military sales and contracts, etc., etc. France may have another view on EU with regard to Ukraine. That's not the point. So, but our foreign policy, I would think, has been very successful. We have shown that we will stand up to the bully, and that has irked the Americans no end. The recent article written by 3 ambassadors, I think in the Times of India, criticizing India for calling Putin over, etc., etc. I think that was in bad taste. Diplomats don't do it, and it should never have been done, which also gave the Russian ambassador an opportunity to give his point of view, which is just as well. So, you know, the West has to get over its hubris about the rest of the world. Things have changed. Actually, to my mind, things began changing in 1952 after the Korean War. It was a drawn game. United States didn't win against a ragtag PLA in the conventional sense. 75, you remember, much before your time, it was Vietnam. They left in a hurry. And the iconic picture was those people hanging onto the helicopter. The West then created the Islamic terrorist Ummah by creating that force that took on Russia in Afghanistan from Pakistan. Okay, now that is haunting them today. And where are your promises when you say that Jolani had a $10 million prize money, is made president of Syria with a different name? So anything can happen in these circumstances. We are not in a position to take America at this moment seriously. We have to depend more on ourselves and the few friends that we might have.
Okay. I think this gentleman right up in front, and then I'll come to you, man.
Mr. Nitin, my question's aimed at...
No, just aim the questions at him.
No, my question's with reference to a particular claim you made earlier. I'm not sure if it's your take or...
Shoot him, no? Why are you shooting me?
No, it's a claim you made. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's your take or if it's Mr.
Okay,
Sood's
fine,
claim.
fine.
But you did mention that the Russians, post Ukraine falling, you assert that they will assert that they'll move their focus towards China, and there's a conflict that will arise between the Russians and the Chinese. I find that to be a little irrational because the man who leads the Russian government now, Putin, he's a former spy who became whatever he is now. I mean, some call him a dictator, some call him a revolutionary, and his movement and his worldview is completely built on this, post-Soviet collapse, something which he views as a
So
geopolitical
you just want
disaster.
me to clarify that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to understand the
Because
rationale
I'm looking
behind
at the
it.
clock. My clock is running out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe you can ask.
But I hope I got my point
Yeah,
across.
you can answer
Also,
that
I
too.
have a copy of
No,
your
no,
book, Mr. Sood. I hope I can get it signed after
Yeah,
the session.
sure, you can. But the mic goes there first. Nice try, man.
Hi, I'm just pulling from international relations to internal security. Nitin alluded to a part of the book where you speak about the enemy within and expressed his disagreement in calling that as enemy within. Would it be more palatable to the rest of the country from a strategic perspective to simply identify that as the threat within? And given the recent events that have happened in Delhi and so on and so forth, why do you push that hard on that term?
Okay. So maybe you can answer both because this is enemy within.
I didn't
His
follow it
question.
because you were answering him.
No. But I was actually paraphrasing your argument where you paraphrased Brzezinski about the importance of Ukraine. Why is the West so invested in Ukraine? And Brzezinski's story about if Russia and China go to loggerheads, Poland becomes important.
That's okay. But before Brzezinski, there were others like Kissinger himself, who said, "Don't go to Ukraine. It's not yours to have. Leave it alone. The Russians will attack you." Even their American ambassador Burns, I think, who was then the CIA head, he also said that Ukraine is a definite niet. You can't go there. You shouldn't be going there. It's not a baby. And you know, you go back to history, 1991, George Baker said that we will not move an inch eastward. NATO will not move an inch eastward. And they systematically ignored that. NATO ignored that, kept eating into the Eastern European countries, brought them into NATO. They wanted very much to have Ukraine in so that they could control Russia more. I think I'll leave it at that and I'll answer the other question, the lady. You said, why do I call it the enemy within? I don't mean the people who disagree with my point of view. I mean the enemy who creates events like the Red Fort bombing. That is the enemy within. That is the enemy we have to tackle. Otherwise, in a democracy, you're going to have all that differences of opinion. But what is not understood by most of us is that philanthropy does not come without cost. Philanthropy of any kind comes with a cost. It is not a freebie. We, the Indians, have to pay a price for it. And that is what has been happening all along, that suborning your mind, I'm speaking because I worked in the system before, so I know how it works, is to make you change your perception and make it to what they want you to think and act, and not leave it to you to decide what you want to do with the situation. You follow me? So there will be people who will not agree with the government, and that is fine, and that is how it should be. But I wish our opposition were more responsible. A good government needs a good responsible opposition. We don't have it. And that's the pity of it. We have only a government which, if you do a thing like Balakot, they want to know, they say it's a fraud, you didn't do it. That's what they said. When you do Sindoor, they don't agree with you. They say, no, the Americans got it done, called you to a ceasefire, etc., etc. So there has to be a responsibility among us when we tackle with the foreigner. They say America first, they say UK first. Why don't we say India first? We never say it. Yeah, he says, we agree. Yeah, you were right. We'll do as you tell us. But you think we don't make good partners with the Americans? We have never, as a democracy, which should have been their first choice in South Asia, but they chose Pakistan because they found it easier to deal with dictators who do their, who respond to their commands much more easily, quickly, and these Democrats are a bloody nuisance. They take all the time and then they eventually say no. So democracy is something which is practiced at home. It is not practiced internationally. So we have to learn to say what is right for India. We don't have to say that if it is right for you, it is right for me also. That's maybe enemy within is a stronger term, but I think I'll stick to it.
Okay. So I think we've got to move, otherwise they'll turn the lights off and start physically evicting us. So thank you very much for being such a nice audience and for putting up with me. And I'm sorry I couldn't take some of the questions. The lights are in my face, so I couldn't see anybody beyond the fourth row. So sorry for that. Thank you very much.
And my apologies for being late. I couldn't find the place.